Hello student, I'm Professor Smita Jha and I'm here to discuss research methodology with a special reference to ontological relevance. You know, research methodology is a very important discipline, important task to know because research is a serious task. And while discussing research methodology, this is utmost important to know about the different paradigms and the school of thought. And ontology is one of the most important paradigm if we talk of the school of thought in research methodology. So why ontology is so relevant in research? Why there is a dire need to understand ontology to pursue a good research, meaningful research, clear research. We should know about it. So let us discuss about ontologies. So ontologies are essential to science because they identify and clarify the entities and concepts that people want to talk about and study. And they identify the key relationships among those concepts. Any research, whether it is humanities research or social sciences, research process is scientific because it is based on objectivism. So understanding of these entities may change over time, but identifying shared names for phenomena is an essential basis for all scientific work, as it is for any constructive communication. Why worry about behavioral ontologies? When researchers and those who apply scientific knowledge may have many other pressing concerns? To understand why this seemingly arcane idea is so important, it is helpful to consider what problems arise when ontologies are not in place. For example, imagine a mental health professional who treats adolescents in a practice where productivity demands are high. This professional knows there is a wealth of research related to their work, but struggles to identify answer to a specific question that arises during their practice. Having minimal time to keep up with journals that document the latest research findings, healthcare providers still want to be able to determine what evidence-based treatment approaches are new and relevant, which one could help their patients, and how their patient might respond to these approaches. We are trying to understand the relevance, significance of ontology. So researchers have developed many terms and models for studying mental health disorders, anxiety, as well as possible treatment. But this evidence about research developments exists in thousands of research papers published every month, which may be classified in varying ways and venues using a wide array of possible search terms. Because research is always, intertextual, based on other argument, and then you coming up with a new argument. And ontology justifies. Psychologists today do not investigate the ego and the id, as they were defined as Sigmund Freud in 1923, but the labeling of these terms opened the door as new ways of talking about their studying psychological phenomena, and thus, despite their scientific obsolescence, their influence in moving behavior science forward has endured. The relationships among entities in an ontology provide essential guidance for scientific work. The ability to classify neural pathways based on the neurotransmitters present at their synapses, for example, allows scientists to relate those pathways to a variety of physiological properties and to specific drugs that may affect the behavior of those pathways. The formal specification of both the essential elements of a scientific discipline and the key relationships among them provide an inspectable shared description of what that discipline is about. The specification offers a framework that enables its practitioners to clarify their shared worldview and to communicate with one another with the clarity needed to advance scientific knowledge. Scientific ontologies are not static. As theories are tested, revised, and ultimately replaced, the terms and relationships in ontologies need to be adapted to reflect the prevailing ways in which researchers construe their discipline. Ontologies thus do not lock in or constrain scientific thought. Instead, they capture in formal terms and relationships what investigators currently are thinking about their field, and they clarify what a particular scientific paradigm postulates about the discipline being modeled. Perhaps just as important, ontologies help to identify weaknesses and gaps in the knowledge on which a discipline is based, because they reveal omissions and inconsistencies in the research literature. Ontologies are more than just a convenient data structure. They provide the basis for both human and machines to apprehend the structure of a scientific discipline and the salient distinction that it makes about the world through an evolving set of standardized concepts and relationships. The existence of an explicit ontology makes possible many functions that are important not only to scientists but also to those who rely on the knowledge that scientists produce. Now, here we can briefly summarize some of the ways ontologies facilitate the progress of science. With particular emphasis on the behavioral sciences, we emphasize that a single ontology or a set of ontologies in the behavioral sciences cannot by itself offer all these advantages. We argue that greater reliance or ontology across domains will cumulatively build rigor, efficiencies, and the other advantages we discuss in a research. The capacity to accurately refer to a behavioral phenomena is a basic pillar of the behavioral sciences, allowing researchers to be precise about what they are studying and how they are conceptualizing their domain. As mentioned, the naming of the id and ego provided a way for psychologists to begin talking about mental phenomena and had not previously been topics of study or even topics of organized discussion. A shared ontology is particularly salient for behavioral scientists who rely heavily on constructs to guide research because many of the phenomena they study are challenging to organize and investigate. A core tension in any ontology is between the values and goals of researchers and the limitations in human capacity to perfectly apprehend and represent what is out there in the domain of scientific inquiry that the ontology is intended to characterize. Scientists recognize that improving their capacity to perceive, understand, and make predictions about the world is a primary goal. Thus, developers of ontologies try to capture as best they can the scientists' shared conceptualization. Well, research is a concept, which in turn is intended to approximate what exists in the world. But ontologies also need to have pragmatic features that allow them to support the particular goals that researchers have, such as classification, communication, data integration and sharing, bibliographic retrieval, and the comparison and analysis of data. Some of the constructs of interest in the behavioral sciences, such as rationality, self-regulation, and complex emotions, may not be at all intuitive or observable, but are essential elements of the behavioral sciences that ontologies could be expected to describe. In recent years, the development of ontologies, explicit formal specification of the terms in the domain and relations among them has been moving from the realm of artificial intelligence laboratories to the desktops of domain experts. Ontologies have become common on the World Wide Web, The ontologies on the web range from large taxonomies categorizing websites such as Yahoo to categorization of products for sale and their features such as Amazon.com. The WWW Consortium is developing the resource description framework in a language for encoding knowledge on web pages to make it understandable to electronic agents searching for information. Even, we use URL in research. And as per MLA 9, we have to document the URL also you have used to support your research argument. Ontology defines a common vocabulary for researchers who need to share information in a domain. It includes machine interpretable definitions of basic concepts in the domain and relations among them. Why would someone want to develop an ontology? So here are some reasons. To share common understanding of the structure of information among people or software agents. To enable reuse of domain knowledge. To make domain assumptions explicit. To separate domain knowledge from the operational knowledge. To analyze domain knowledge. So ontologies enable knowledge sharing. Suppose we perform an analysis and arrive at a satisfactory set of conceptualizations and their representative terms for some area of knowledge. The resulting ontology would likely include domain-specific terms such as transistors and diodes, general terms such as functions, causal processes, and modes, and terms that describe behavior such as voltages. So ontology captures the intrinsic conceptual structures of the domain, that is research, and in order to build a knowledge, representation, language based on the analysis, we need to associate terms with the concepts and relation in the ontology and devise a syntax for encoding knowledge in terms of the concepts and relation. That is why keywords are very important in any research. We can share this knowledge representation language with others who have similar needs for knowledge representation in that domain, thereby eliminating the need for replicating the knowledge analysis process. Shared ontologies can thus form the basis from domain-specific knowledge representational languages. So language is also very, very important vocabulary when you go for a clear, simple, good research. We can share this knowledge representation language with others who have similar needs for knowledge representation in that domain, thereby eliminating the need for replicating the knowledge analysis process. Shared ontologies can thus form the basis for domain-specific knowledge representation languages. Therefore, ontology plays a role in describing such things as plans and activities, because these also require a specification of world objects and relations. Propositional attitude terms are also part of a larger ontology of the world, useful especially in describing the activities and properties of the special class of objects in the world called intentional entities. For example, agents such as humans who have mental states. Constructing ontologies is an ongoing research enterprise. Ontologies range in abstraction from very general terms that form the foundation for knowledge, representation in all domains, to terms that are restricted to a specific knowledge domains. Ontology has grown beyond philosophy and now has many connections to, scientific technology, AI researches. This is the age of digital humanities as well. Thus, research on ontology in artificial intelligence and in digital humanities information system has had to produce pragmatically useful proposals for top-level ontology. The organization of a top-level ontology contains several problems similar to the problems that surround ontology. So although differences exist within ontology, general agreement exists between ontologies on many issues. Now, there are objects in the world. Objects have properties or attributes that can take values. Objects can exist in various relations with each other. Properties and relations can change over time. Some events occur at different time instants. There are processes in which objects participate and that occur over time. The world and its objects can be in a different states. Event can cause other events or a state as effects. Objects can have parts. How task dependent are ontologies? Presumably, the kinds of things that exist do not depend on our goals. In that sense, ontologies are not task dependent. On the other hand, what aspects of reality are chosen for encoding in an ontology does depend on the task. So, ontology in research is merely the conceptual framework that describes categories, entities, and different relationships that exist or are relevant to a specific area of study. Because I told you that cohesiveness, consistency is very important for a good research. It therefore provides a systematic way and manner in which knowledge could be represented and organized. Through ontology, researchers can expound clearly their assumptions regarding the nature of reality and about phenomena of concern. Ontology provides a shared vocabulary and framework that lends itself to creating appropriate way of ensuring consistency and coherence in methodology when searching. Because when you are preparing your research proposal, two things are very important. Your research methodology and theoretical framework. So these two can be decided if epistemology, paradigm and ontology paradigm very, very clear to you. So ontologies are also very important for use in social sciences, humanity, because they guide the organization of resources, enhance information retrieval, and boost the development of intelligent systems. In any research, ontology makes an inquiry much tougher and contributes towards a deeper understanding of complex relationships without any given domain. Ontology is the leading aspects of defining how existence might exist and govern the bonding relationships between any objects. Its influence goes beyond philosophy into practical usage, especially with technology and the organizing of data. Ontology, therefore, helps to improve communication and retrieval of information in almost all fields as it provided frameworks for the categorization of knowledge. One of the most confusing things about exploring the theoretical underpinning of social research is that there are so many different terms used and different writers have historically used them in different ways. For example, does the term realism refer to an ontological position? It can do. Or a paradigm? Again, it can do. What then does realism contrast with? It might be anti-realism, idealism, or relativism, depending on how each of these terms are understood. Coming to the metaphysics, which is an important part of ontology, the attempt to describe the general structure of reality. Metaphysics describe essence, substance, and form, as according to the Plato. Essence is what makes a thing that particular thing. In other words, essence is what makes that chair. Substance is what makes a thing a general thing. In other words, the substance is what makes a chair. Form is what makes the idea of a thing, without which the thing would not be intelligible. In other words, form is what makes that idea of that chair. Ontology is a subject of metaphysics, that is, beyond physical. The branch of metaphysics that deal with beings for things. Ontology means the things and the characteristics, features of the things that can exist in the world, natural, physics, or abstract. Concerned with the nature of reality and what is there to know about the world, that is phenomena. two overarching ontological positions that shape social science: realism and idealism. Realism, based on the idea that there is an external reality which exists independently of people's beliefs about or understanding of it. Idealism asserts that reality is fundamentally mind dependent and no reality exists independent of human mind or socially constructed meaning. Ontological position: realism can be an external reality exists independent of our beliefs and understanding. Naive realism or shallow realism: reality can be observed directly and accurately. We can discuss cautious realism, that means reality can be known approximately or imperfectly rather than accurately. Depth realism, critical or transcendental realism: reality consists at different levels. That is, the empirical domain, that made up of what we experience through our senses. The actual domain that exists regardless of whether or not it is observed. Subtle realism: an external reality exists but is only known through human mind and socially constructed meaning. So, ontology in feminist research is the study of how people understand the world, particularly in relation to gender. It's a philosophical study of being or what is real. What does feminist ontology consider? Gendered attributes of leaders, citizens, and states are constructed and reconstructed based on gendered power relations. Gender is central to power and process. There are ongoing discussions within feminist methodology that highlight the influence of emotionality on both researchers and their subjects during fieldwork. Researchers not only experience emotions in the field, but also throughout the stages of transcription, analysis, write-up, and beyond. Increasingly, these situated emotions are recognized as essential for gaining a deeper understanding, particularly when researching human suffering. Feminist methodologies require researchers to immerse themselves in the fieldwork process, making them vulnerable to any emotional dynamics as they unfold. In positioning researchers both physically and emotionally, it arguably imbues them with epistemological and ontological significance. A turn to ontology, the take-up of realist social theorizing, has the potential to be used to all projects in social theorizing. This was the theme of one of the papers in Feminist Economics. A tendency is noted within feminist argument to play down any role for explicit ontological analysis, to make a distance from forms of realism. A primary goal of ontological inquiry is to provide as complete and encompassing an account of the broad nature and a structure of a relevant domain of reality as possible. Of course, all knowledge obtained is inevitably partial and fallible, including ontological insight. But a goal of philosophical ontology is to articulate a theory of the nature and a structure of reality that is as encompassing as possible of actual configurations experienced. To derive such an ontological conception, the theorist supposes at the outset that the world is infallible, that what has happened, the actual, must have been possible, and that there are conditions which rendered the actual possible. An ontological framework is achieved precisely through theorizing sets of conditions in virtue of which certain generalized features of widespread experience were possible. Of course, deriving ontological insights can be a complex task. Certainly, it is always a fallible one. So, ontological analysis can provide insight, but there are limitations to the sorts of insight it can provide. Ontology can indicate possibilities or at most the conditions of actualities. It cannot determine which configuration of possibilities will or will not be actualized in any context. Well, from the perspective of critical realism, it is possible both to criticize the priori universalization of mainstream economic modeling methods as at best a rather risky strategy, and also to explain a posteriori the repeated failure experienced by that project. But ontological argument alone does not support the inference that social closure could not or will never occur any more than it can rule out the possibility that a fair coin tossed 100 times will show 100 heads. Researcher must consider a variety of factors in choosing the best methodology for their study. In most cases, research questions and objectives play a significant role in defining the most appropriate research methodology to use, and here it is ontology that helps you in larger measure. So, research philosophy and research paradigm are terms that tend to be used pretty loosely, even interchangeably. Broadly speaking, they both are referred to the set of beliefs, assumptions, and principles that underlie the way you approach your study, means that is dissertation or thesis, that how you decide questions and the objective, because the entire discussion based on that only. Importantly, your research philosophy or paradigm form the foundation of your study. More specifically, they will have a direct influence on your research methodology, including your research design or your literature review and analysis techniques you adopt, and of course, how you interpret the result. So it is important to understand the philosophy, and these are all philosophy. Ontology is a philosophy that underlies your research to ensure that the rest of your methodological decisions are well designed. Researcher must carefully consider which research philosophy align best with their research question and objectives, as well as the purpose and significance of their study being conducted. Understanding these key types of research philosophy is crucial for developing a coherent and effective research methodology. Research philosophy deals with the source, nature, development of knowledge. In simple terms, research philosophy is belief about the ways in which data about a phenomenon should be collected, analyzed, and useful. Although the idea of knowledge creation may appear to be profound, you are engaged in knowledge creation as part of completing your research, your thesis, your dissertation. You will collect secondary and primary data and engage in data analysis to answer the research question, and this answer marks the creation of a new knowledge, a new paradigm. So see how important ontology is to fix the reality, to justify the knowledge you explored through discussion, through literature review based on your rationale or belief. So here I conclude the relevance of ontology, and in my opinion, any serious student, research student should have proper knowledge of epistemology, ontology to develop a good research methodology. With this, I conclude today's discussion. We shall discuss the other part next time. Till then, thank you.